Maps are polite lies, lines pretending the world will sit still if we draw them sharp enough. But where I'm from, we had a line on paper that didn't match the road under our feet. We had a bridge that wouldn't stay put. And if you crossed it after dark, you didn't always come back to the same place that you left. Welcome to Tales of the Beard. I'm Matt. Tonight, a story from the back roads about a river, a rural shortcut, and why the locals won't drive after midnight. This is the bridge that moves at night. At 2:58 a.m., the river is a flat ribbon of black glass. The old truss bridge, the one with the green paint that flakes onto your windshield like freckles, breathes in the cold. Steel always does. Then right on the edge of hearing, it shifts. The deck whispers against its bolts. The guardrail murmurs a complaint. Somewhere, upriver, a barred owl calls once. Downriver, an empty pickup's dome light is on, door ajar, key still swinging. There are footprints in the gravel that start at the shoulder and don't continue across. By morning, the bridge is a quarter-mile downstream, rooted to the banks like it's always been there. And town maps called it Glen Mill Bridge, a nobody span with a 2-lane side that connected farms to the sawmill and everybody to everybody else. The county called it Struct number 114B, which is how you know that nobody was watching it closely. But in diners and barbershops, the older folks called it the Walker, because sometimes before dawn, it wasn't where you left it. We all knew the stories. Busted mail routes, a school bus that had to reverse a mile because the road dead end just went into river mist, and an unlucky fisherman who swore he watched the bridge slide past like a patient animal going to water. He sold his boat, moved inland, and kept 3 clocks in every room, just in case time had the same bad habit. When the county finally cared, it sent a survey crew. A young inspector named Jordan led it. Practical boots, a notebook with dirt ground into the spiral, and that stubborn field confidence you get from arguing with culverts all day. Jordan's job was simple on paper: confirm coordinates. On the ground, it felt like measuring a dream with a ruler. Jordan chalked the abements, painted X's on both banks, and logged the GPS. No magic, they said, just steel and concrete. The old-timers hissed through their teeth. Don't mark the walker, a mechanic warned. It hates being pinned. That night, Jordan parked by the tree line, set a tripod with a motion camera on time-lapse, and ran a heavy chain through the guardrail into a rooted maple. You know, the kind whose roots look like hands. They sat in the truck with a thermos and a map, drawing neat lines in pencil while crickets sawed the dark into little pieces. Midnight drifted in. 1 a.m. 2. The kind of hours that make even seasoned field techs start to doubt their eyes. At 2:59, the camera caught a tremor. At 3:01, a fog rolled in fast and low, like someone tilted a lake and let it spill. At 3:03, the chain went tight. At 3:05, the maple groaned, the kind of human sound trees make right before a storm takes them. At 3:07, the chain, well, it slacked. By sunrise, the chalk was smeared with the river silt, and the bridge's silhouette was now framed by willows that hadn't been on last night's horizon. Jordan checked the GPS twice, 3 times. The numbers were off by a few hundred yards, just enough for a lawsuit or a ghost story. They wrote, abutment migration, riverbed scour, then beneath it smaller, or the road moved. Engineers, they hate superstition, but they love data, and Jordan came back with the tools and a plan. They set 4 cameras on both banks, each offset. They hammered rebar markers along the approaches like sewing pins in a quilt. They sprayed neon paint on rocks, added witness stakes, and borrowed a wildlife collar from a biologist at the university, the kind that pings a location every single minute. The collar clicked around a steel upright with a little red LED heartbeat. That night, the river was flat again. The fog came late, like it had been told to wait a little bit. 3 o'clock, the LED beat steady. At 3:01, the collar pinged, location lost. 3:02, it pinged from 2 places at once, upstream and down. 3:03, the camera stuttered, frame skipping like a scratched DVD. 3:04, every sound in the world held its breath. When the feed caught up, the bridge, well, it looked the same, but the trees didn't. Jordan replayed the footage frame by frame. On one frame, the far bank had a white farmhouse and a swing set. On the next, the farmhouse was a tumble-down barn. On the third, a billboard for a local senator wagged a smile where no billboard had ever been. Jordan's pencil slid off the page. Okay, they said to 101. We're not measuring a thing. We're measuring a place. Humans don't learn by being told. We learn by putting our hand on the stove exactly once. Jordan decided to cross. They left a note on the dash. If I'm not back by sunrise, cut the chain. They looped a climbing rope around the waist and ran it to a ground anchor. A drill bit steel spiral for holding stubborn dogs and stubborn yards. Then they stepped onto the deck. Halfway across the bridge felt attentive. The air thickened like warm honey. The truss hummed a note that made fillings itch. Jordan paused, palm on the railing. The metal felt awake, like a horse that just noticed a rider. At the midpoint, there was a small brass plaque. No date, just 3 etched names. Jordan hadn't noticed it before. They brushed silt from the letters. One of the names was faint, like it had been polished by too many fingers to remember it. 259. 3. The rope tightened without pulling. Jordan blinked, and the bank behind them slid, like a postcard being swapped for another under a magician's hand. Same angle, different trees, same road, different shoulder. Far bank, same silhouette, different stars. The bridge wasn't moving. It was connecting, not to like place to place, version to version. Jordan took one more step and felt the drop of a roller coaster when the car tips over the first hill. Then everything went very, very quiet. When Jordan's boots found gravel again, the truck was still there. The note was still on the dash. The chain was still looped to the maple, except the maple wasn't a maple. It was a pine with a childhood carved heart that read J plus A equals forever. And Jordan, well, he didn't know any A's. They drove home on autopilot. The mailbox at the end of the driveway had their number, but the paint was a different color. The dog barked from inside, but it wasn't their dog. And the person who opened the door had Jordan's eyes and a face that wasn't theirs. Jordan backed away slow. The house had the same cracks and the same concrete, but the wind chime on the porch sang a tune they never heard. The world was right where it should be, arranged just a little bit wrong. They checked their phone, contacts with names they recognized, but threads that didn't exist yesterday. Text from a coworker about the new coffee machine they'd never seen. On the fridge, through a window, a kid's drawing of a bridge with too many legs. Jordan sat in the truck until the sun yanked the black out of the river. Then they drove back to Glen Mill. The collar was pinging softly. Said the bridge was right where it should be, which told them exactly nothing. You can ignore a problem long enough for it to become folklore. But then folklore leaves evidence. Missing posters accumulate on a community board like layered bark. Driver's license comes back in the mail. Return to sender. With the plastic warped as if it had been in the pocket that wasn't yours. A store clerk calls you by a nickname no one uses, and you answer. Jordan started collecting the names on the brass plaque. Town records called them adjustments. 3 people whose lives had gone slightly wrong in quiet ways in the years. The new reservoir diverted the old riverbed. A foreman, a school librarian, a stonemason, people who knew how to anchor things. The old bridge had been built when the river cut differently. When the county laid the reservoir, they drowned 1,000 trees in 3 cellar holes and rerouted the current with concrete. They moved the water and expected the rest to follow. But the bridge was stubborn. It remembered its first job, to connect where the banks truly wanted to meet. When the river moved, the bridge started counting. Not years, not floods, equivalent weights. What was taken had to be tied. What was shifted had to be balanced. You can do that with stones. You can do that with names. The walker wasn't hunting. It was bookkeeping. At 3:07 a.m., each night the ledger opened, and somewhere in the braided rope of reality, a strand got snipped and retied to make the whole stronger. Sometimes those strands were roads. Sometimes they were you. Jordan tried to beat the math. They brought a colleague, Marin, who didn't believe in anything but torque specs. We'll mark it from the far side, Marin said. Same time, same rope, both of us a closed loop. If it's a trick of sight, we'll catch it. If it's a trick of magnetism, we'll record it. They set 2 anchors, 2 ropes, 2 bodies. Mirrored. At 2:59, the ropes hummed. At 3, the air tasted like pennies. 3:01, They felt the pressure you feel in elevators, in deep water. Bad decision. Aaron whispered, "Do you hear that?" Jordan did. A distant clatter of dinner plates, a radio playing an advertisement, a language that was so wrong, so much as sideways, a laugh that sounded like their mother but belonged to somebody else's childhood. "Back out," Jordan said. "Back out." They did. They think they did. On the far bank, Marin's anchor was gone and replaced by a granite post stamped 1932 that no one had wired for aground. On the near bank, Jordan's truck was now a different model, different year. But the key still worked. Marin texted, "See you at the office." Jordan's phone chimed from a thread that didn't exist yesterday. "You bringing donuts again?" At work, Marin's desk had a different family photo with the same faces and different clothes. Marin's coffee mug read, "World's #2 engineer," a gag Jordan remembered buying from a store they'd never visited. If this is starting to feel like magic and like a little bit of a magic trick, it is. The kind where the magician says, "Keep your eye on the ball." And the trick is that the ball was never the point. Jordan came to me because I tell stories, and sometimes stories need witnesses. "You'll think I'm losing it," they said, thumb rubbing at the edge of a plaque, rubbing like they could warm it back to the right name. But if I can get people to listen, maybe they'll stop crossing after dark. I went with them one evening. We didn't bring ropes. We brought coffee and patience and the kind of silence people use when their next move matters. We stood at the midpoint as the river folded. Darkness, right into itself. A night heron ghosted past. The truss sang its toothed note, and the bridge, no other way to say it, leaned in like a dog who knows where the treats are kept. "What does it do it? Why does it do it?" I asked, like the bridge could hear and answer. Jordan's mouth twitched. "Because something upstream got cheated," they said. "Because the river's original bed was a promise, and the walker keeps promises. It matches edges, reconciles ledgers. Every night it tries to line this world up with one that should have been if we hadn't shaved the corners." We didn't cross. We waited until the next hour passed and the bridge relaxed. Felt like letting a friend win an argument. You know you can't. On the chalk guardrail, someone had written, "If you hear it, call your name. Go home." A week later, a letter arrived at the station where I record. No return address, but the handwriting was Jordan's. Starch straight lines and a bored dot on every I. It said, "If I'm different next time you see me, be kind. The walker doesn't steal, it exchanges. I left coins on the rail tonight, and when the fog lifts, somebody will be evened out. Maybe I'll finally be from the place I kept waking up in. Maybe I'll get back the dog that knows my footsteps. If you share this, tell them 3 rules. 1, if the bridge whistles once, turn around. 2, if it whistles twice, run. 3, if it whistles 3 times, don't move at all. Let it choose for you. It's better at that than we are. P.S. The plaque has 4 names now. The 4th is very faint. I don't remember carving it." I went to look. The plaque did have 4 names. Unfortunately, the 4th was mine. You can laugh and say a friend played a prank. You can say I'm leaning into the bit to sell you a good story. But my studio key sticks in the lock now. It didn't used to. The coffee shop across the street moved 2 doors left overnight. The barista wears the same smile with a different name tag. When I drove out of Glen Mill at sunrise, the bridge sat in a place that made the road make, well, more sense than it ever has. It's a better fit, cleaner, like a puzzle piece, finally pressed where it belonged. So here's what I think, what I'm scared to say out loud. The bridge doesn't move. We do. Every night at 3:07, the world finds a truer version of itself and steps an inch in that direction. Some inches are people. Some inches are name. Some inches are me. And if you're listening to this and thinking, didn't Matt used to pronounce the diner Maynards and not Maynards? Well, if you're sure a street you've driven your whole life has a bend in it and it didn't before. If your dog paused at your door this morning like you smelled a little bit different, maybe you don't drive tonight. Not because the bridge will get you, but because it might fix something you didn't know was crooked, and you might not agree with its math. That was the bridge that moves at night. If you're a local, you don't need me to tell you which river I mean. If you're not, look up your street signs tomorrow. Make sure they're where you left them. If this episode gave you goosebumps, well, you're welcome. Until next time, Keep your lights low, your maps loose, and your name off any brass you didn't recognize. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody.